used to work at I used to work at TV. I know it's a great group of professionals who are actually doing these courses, presenting the finding opportunities for PhD and postdocs, and support researchers in the university on the way to funding. And I hope that Paul could share some information on funding opportunities in Netherlands with all of you. Yeah, Paul, thank you once again, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So yes, indeed, I was asked. I gathered some slides together from the material we have. So normally we present for TU researchers and to guide them. And I will make the slides available afterwards, so you will get a copy. Let me share my screen. So what I was asked to tell about a bit about the Dutch academic system and funding landscape. I'll put the focus on the funding landscape because that's where I have my expertise, not so much of the Dutch academic system, but nevertheless I will briefly touch upon that, as I can understand that is not so widely known. And let's talk about personal grants and collaborative projects and what it takes to write such a grant proposal. And I'll show you some of the landscape of both the Dutch, the regional and European landscape. I'm not sure how much time I have. Please interrupt when I will run over time.
You have half an hour.
Okay, starting now. So
of course,
until 15:15, then that's okay. I'll try to do it in that time. There are several universities in the Netherlands. There are general universities, there are technical universities. There are 4 technical universities, Delft, Twente, Eindhoven, Wageningen, where yeah, you are becoming a scientist in engineering, an ingenieur, kind of technical with that focus. The general universities include exact sciences, but also include life sciences and social sciences. I think what I draw here is the general career path of a scientist, starting as a bachelor student, doing a master, and then going to a PhD, possibly a postdoc, possibly become assistant professor and full professor at the end. But I also drew the route out of the scientific career into industry, because, well, we know that, for instance, from the PhDs, more than 3/4 of the PhDs after doing a PhD will not become a postdoc, but will start working in industry. In the Netherlands, and in particular in the Brainport region, where Eindhoven University is located, there is a very much job opportunities in industry these days, and a flourishing industrial network. But I understand I now speak to scientists who are interested in a scientific career, so that involves taking all those steps. The scale is not linear when it comes to time. A PhD is 4 years, that's what we know. A postdoc depends, assistant prof, it depends. There could be a tenure track in between. That's the overall yeah, an overview of the system, which I think is not different from other countries. When it is about applying for funding, I think there is a very important distinction to be made between a personal grant and a collaborative project. So a personal grant is, as the name said, a grant or some funding for you as a person, as a scientist, and it is for your career development as a scientist, where you as a scientist can indicate, this is my scientific interest, this is the topic on which I want to further develop and grow. And then it could be that if you have a convincing proposal about how you think your career could be advanced in this particular topic, it will raise the science, and it is meant as science for science. On the other hand, collaborative projects are not done on a personal basis, but are also done as a consortium. Also, a university can hardly do that on its own. It's then a university building a consortium, often with industry, sometimes with other university or with other knowledge institutes. Do I see a chat? Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. feel free to write them there and then tell me. Societal benefit is more of an issue at the collaborative projects. They are not intended to anybody's career development, but are really intended to address societal issues we have and where science can provide the solutions. That's why also a consortium with industry is very relevant, as that will probably provide the route to market and also the route to society. In the funding scheme of collaborative project, the calls are often thematic, where a specific topic is asked for, and it's not up to the scientists to decide what the interest is, but it is the program that asks for solution in certain areas, like energy reduction or improving health or whatever. So that's why. Let me first now dwell a bit further into the personal grants before we then come back on the collaborative grants. So let me get rid of all these windows. Yeah. Why do you want a personal grant? Well, as said, it's for your career development, and it is to work on your interest in ideas and for your own research line or a possible continuation of the scientific career. So for instance, if you are doing a PhD and the 4 years are nearly done, then it could be interesting to apply for personal grant in order to get a postdoc position. But also as a postdoc or a tenure track, there are personal grants that allow you to stay at the university and to move on in your research, so as to also get international recognition on that through publications and possibly a more independent position. This sounds very good. In general, I would say there is money that you can ask for to get for your own personal development. But of course, when the news is so good, there is also a downside. Personal grants are very, very competitive. So there are a lot of applications of mostly very good scientists that really aim for such personal grants. So the submissions must not only be good, they should really be of excellent quality in order to make a chance for that. I see a question. Can Ukrainians staying in Ukraine apply for the Dutch personal grants? That's a good question. I'm not sure if I know that, but I would guess that is a no. I would guess, but I don't know by heart that it is a requirement that the research is carried out in the Netherlands when it is about Dutch personal grants. Maybe Rian can comment, who is also online, but it's my guess. Yes. This is a no.
One of the criteria to get that you can submit, that you should be in a Dutch university even. So I don't know if you are in a Dutch university, are related to a Dutch university. But that makes a difference.
Is saying you need an embedding guarantee from a Dutch university. So not only should you be connected to a university or even employed by a university, even further, the university should declare and say, okay, we also support this from a university point of view. In this case, a Dutch university. Yeah, that is the situation. So it's challenging because this competition is so fierce. So there are phases to go through. You have to provide a proposal. And this evaluation process takes a half or a full year. The proposal is being reviewed and possibly improved or done. And then at a certain stage, there is an interview, which is crucial that in that interview, you give the right impression, and that will then result, maybe in a declination and maybe in an approval. So it's not a quickie to be done easily. However, it can be done, and of course there are people who get the scholarships for it. So the process to come from an idea, I would like to do research on this or that topic, and I feel I could be excellent in that, it leads to a proposal, of course, has the phases of the project idea development first, and then the writing of the proposal as second. We strongly recommend to not start by writing a proposal, but really by elaborating on your project idea and asking yourself the questions, why would I be better than others on this particular topic? And what exactly is my topic, and what are the boundaries of my topic? And what is the proposition I have to offer there? And discuss this with other people, be challenged by peers, by more senior scientific staff, by support staff. And once this proposition is really where you feel, okay, now I know what I really want, and then the writing can be done, and the writing is then more or less rather straightforward, although still the writing must also be done in an excellent way in order to get it approved. So this is a process that takes time. You have to be very careful that it fits with the scope of the goal. Budget is an issue to take into account at time. This embedding guarantee, as mentioned, should be arranged because otherwise it might fail for that. And if the project definition is well done, the writing is easier. Still, you have to write something that fits the evaluation criteria. You may not always agree with the evaluation criteria or think, they could have been formulated otherwise. Yes, they could, but they are what they are, and your proposal must fit 100% on those evaluation criteria. So your proposal should really be a match to what they are asking for. So questions to ask yourself then are, where do I want to be in a couple of years from now? What is the topic or field? And why is that really my choice to do that? Will I stay in academia, or would I eventually move to industry? With whom do I want to collaborate, etc.? Build your track record to support that indeed your proposition is not just a thought, but is really a plan that you maintain over longer time, and where you have your early successes to explain why you would like to continue that. So whenever you are developing a proposal to be applied somewhere, and which will be evaluated by experts who are then asked to assess the proposal against the predefined criteria, it's very, very good to put yourself in the opposite position and imagine you would be the evaluator of your own proposal. And what would the checklist be that you have in your hand while reading someone else's proposal? And then what are the others looking for, those who will be evaluating your proposal? What kind of vision and ambition do they want to see? And is there then evidence that that is really your ambition? The independence of others, what international activities did you employ? From what can be derived that you have a talent for science? What is your expertise exactly in your specific niche? Why are you the person to do that? And has that already been recognized internationally by citations or otherwise? Were there any grants or prizes already, etc., etc.? Depends also a bit on the maturity of if it's an early stage personal grant or a more advanced personal grant, but we in general recommend to discuss these kind of questions, your strengths and improvements, with colleague or supervisor you are working with, in case that is possible to further develop your project idea. And make a 2-pager. Don't start to write the whole proposal, but start with a small short description and discuss with peers, with colleagues, collaborators, but also with support professionals. So then it comes, so what calls are there? Then when it comes to personal grants, there are typically 2 categories, the European ones and the Dutch ones. You may be familiar with the European ones, the Marie Curie Fellowships and the European Research Council, which has the 3 stages of starting, consolidator and advanced grants. Probably known, in the Netherlands, we have a similar scheme at national level, the talent scheme, VENI, VD, VICI, the 3 stages, early, mid and late stage researcher. But then from the NWO, the Dutch Organization for Scientific Research, and there is the Rubicon grants. Maybe Rian, you can further tell a bit more on these as expert on NWO.
You mean about these funding sources for the personal grants? I think you explained it quite well. Also the possibilities that we have. The next slide, are that the collaborative grants? Yeah. No, I was actually asking the VENI and the VD and the VICI at how many years of research is that? I'm not too keen on that. The VENI is for early researchers. Is that 2 years after PhD or something like that? We have a really nice personal grants team.
Yeah, they know it exactly.
Really much by head. The VENI is really in the early career. the VD is for mid-career researchers, and the VC is for, I wouldn't say end career, but really senior researchers. I think, to my opinion, on the NWO website, it's really clearly defined what are the criteria to be eligible for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know it by head, I'm sorry.
No, but we could ask further questions.
Yeah.
So let me go on to the collaborative grants, which is my own territory more than the personal grants, for which we have other colleagues who are specialists at TU Eindhoven then. So the collaborative grants, as indicated earlier, then it is about consortium building in order to have a group that together addresses a societal benefit, is asked to address a societal issue and is supposed to create impact on that. And those exist at 3 levels at least: the European level, national level, and even in the south of the Netherlands, we can also recognize some regional grants. Talking about European programs issued by the European Commission in Brussels, then of course the most well-known programs are the Horizon Europe and the Digital Europe programs. They are huge programs. Horizon Europe is about 70 billion euro in total to be spent over an 8-year period on R&D and I, research, development and innovation. In the Brussels terminology, innovation is bringing things to market, is sometimes called valorization, where they have projects, innovation action or research and innovation actions that are really focused on certain, to address certain topics. From Brussels, there are very detailed descriptions, the work programs, on what they ask for. The European Commission knows what they ask and formulate very specific questions. So one of the success criteria is also, do I really answer the question that is asked for, or am I doing something else, which might be also very innovative, but if it's not exactly what is asked for, you may not be selected. Also there the competition is fierce. The overall success rate is 15%, 1-5 only, so about the 6th or so. So you really have to write the better proposals. The Digital Europe program, in contrast to Horizon Europe, is a more application-oriented program which is slightly higher TRL levels, more supporting the digitization of Europe in general and applying technology and scientific results that could have originated from Horizon Europe or otherwise. So as a university, it's not so trivial for us to participate in Digital Europe. That is more, as it is more application and more higher level TRL oriented, it is typically led from industrial partners, but at times we are invited to join them. EU for Health is a separate program on health, obviously. European Defence Fund is rather large and important, and EAISI is another one. Next to the programs that are governed by the European Commission, truly European programs, there are also transnational programs, and that are programs where different countries in Europe work together, but not under the umbrella of the European Commission. You could say independent from the European Commission and all the red tape it sometimes takes. So these are the country local governments. So our government in The Hague here in the Netherlands and the German government in Berlin, they have national funds. And sometimes we have a combination of those national funds, like the ITEA program for IT and software development, and ECS for electronic components and systems. And Eurostars is a program dedicated on small and medium enterprises. At the European scale, with both with funding from multiple national governments that put their money together, and that also require that consortia across those borders collaborate. The Key Digital Technology Program, KDT, the successor of Excel, is an even more advanced funding scheme where indeed the European Commission is involved and national governments are involved and industry is involved, the tripartite systems, and where money is put together from 3 sources. Those are very large programs of 20, 30, 40 partners in one project, with project sizes of 10, 20, 30, or 100 million. So that's another ball game, you could say, especially compared to the personal grants we just discussed. This is really really something else. An elaborate question I see coming in various platforms looking for opportunities to collaborate with scientific organizations in the Netherlands. Well, yes, there are. Typical algorithm finding cooperation, well, algorithm, a network rather. Of course, these things work through network, and who do you know, because it's often very much linked to a certain scientific area. Is it possible for a scientist from Ukraine to work in commercial scientific organizations in the Netherlands and get a grant? Yes. Is it possible for a scientist from Ukraine to cooperate with universities? Well, Dutch universities take on personnel that, when on board, can apply for grants and will be supported. And those people could come from Ukraine or from any other country in principle. So the personnel at scientists at the university come from a variety of international backgrounds. But a scientist in Ukraine or from Ukraine in the Netherlands, but not on the payroll of a university, is not eligible. So first you have to be, like a PhD position is a job at the university, and a postdoc position is a job at the university. So once you have a job at the university, then as part of that, grants can be applied like I am describing. But I do not think any individual from any other abroad country, including Ukraine, would be eligible, except for certain personal grants which are there to come and join a university. But and maybe some Marie Curie grants are like that, but that I do not really know. Is there any specific funding for starting?
Maybe, Paul, I can add that when you are a scientist in Ukraine, but if you are on a university being a scientist in Ukraine, and then you are an employee in Ukraine, and then you can, you might be able to join together in a project. So it depends whether you are a scientist with or without a contract of a university. If it is in the Netherlands or Ukraine,
or Germany. And I think from a European Commission perspective that Ukraine is an associated country. I think. So the rules of the European Commission are that the Horizon Europe program is primarily intended for European member states, but also associated countries can participate. And Switzerland and Norway are such associated countries.
Yeah.
I understood this is being recorded, so there will be a recording later. But let me move on in the meantime, talking a bit about Dutch national funding programs, because that was the main interest, probably. Then I have to make a distinction between two main sources of funding in the Netherlands. One through the Ministry of Education, Culture and Science, where NWO is the organization that implements the funding schemes that are driven from that ministry, in contrast to the other ministry, EZK, which is Economic Affairs and Climate. And their RVO is another agency in the Netherlands that implements the more economic driven and industry driven calls. And we've listed a few that are there. So can you tell about the Dutch funding landscape? Well, there are at least two. In fact, because this division goes up to the ministry level, and there are really quite some difference between NWO and RVO, whereby RVO mainly industries should be in the lead, and universities or scientists can only participate as part of an industry-driven consortium at times. The Vernieuwingsimpuls, the improvement impulse on personal grants, like we mentioned earlier, is run by NWO, and there are a few other NWO calls and programs in the Netherlands. But it's hard to discuss that in general, because mostly it depends what is your area of interest and what specific things are you looking for. But calls are published on the site and available. Or can you elaborate on that, Rianne, on what other calls from NWO could be relevant for this audience? No longer there.
You're on mute, Rane.
Yes, I'm sorry. As I see also in the questions in the chat, the audience is really broad. So I think that it really depends on whether you are in the Netherlands, affiliated with a Dutch university, all those kind of things. The NWO website has a really nice search tool. It's an integral call planning. I will put the link of it in the chat box. And there you can see which programs are available. And then you can also see what are the eligibility criteria. So it's a bit a vague answer. I'm sorry for that, but it really depends on your specific situation.
Yeah. It's hard to answer these things.
Yes, I'm sorry.
In general, we realize that. Regional collaborative grants, I don't know to what extent that is relevant for this audience. So that is focused on the region of the south of the Netherlands, where the Eindhoven University is located. We have the OP-Zuid, OP Operational Program South of Netherlands, where specific funds are available for specific implementations that are supported by the southern regions in the Netherlands. And Interreg, as the name said, it's inter-regional, so it's connecting different regions. So the south of Netherlands and the north of Belgium are neighbors in terms of region, and also with Germany. And Interreg is a European funding program for this trans-border investigations. But these programs are typically somewhat higher level oriented. So I think they are not applicable for pure scientific research, as they really ask for higher level, more field lab tests, etc. Then there are other local grants which are very specific. 4TU, the collaborations of the 4 technical universities in the Netherlands, also issued a call, High Tech for a Sustainable Future, as an example of very specific local calls. The EAISI Impulse program. EAISI is the AI Systems Institute at Eindhoven University. They have their own program how to collaborate with industry and support that. So that is relevant for researchers at the Eindhoven University involved in AI and aiming to work together with industry. As Rian also said, these are things are hard to answer in general, because mostly the answer is it depends. Well, on what does it depend? Well, it depends on many different characteristics, like indicated here, the TRL level. Is it very fundamental research, or is it already with an application in mind? What consortium are we talking about? Is it a personal grant? No consortium at all, only one person. Or is it a very small consortium, a university working with one small company or with one large company? Or is it even a consortium of 5, 10, 20 or 40 partners? That really makes a difference. Is it a thematic call, for instance, from Europe, where one specific piece of innovation is asked for? Or is it a bottom-up call where you can propose what you would like to research on, and where you come with good ideas that should fit in a charter that is rather general or vague? The diversity of partners, is it the university-university collaboration, or is it the university-industry collaboration? And if so, is it with small SMEs or with large industry? That makes a lot of sense. Is the outcome only papers? Is the outcome a demonstrator? Is the outcome a new process? What is the outcome? What is the result of a project? Can be way different. Sometimes a demonstrator is the result. Sometimes a piece of software is the result, and sometimes publication are the results. And the evaluation criteria are also quite different per program. So yeah, I don't want to make it more difficult than it is, but on the other hand, there is no one size fits all here, for sure not. So this is a diagram of what we then call the funding landscape, a possible way of trying to depict all these different programs in one picture, so to say, which is of course not exclusive, and it's indicative, and a lot of disclaimers are there to be made. However, it can give a bit of an overview. Where you see at the vertical axis the number of participants. So one participant, the personal grants are typically only one. And sometimes we have consortium with even more than 10 partners. The more bluish are the bottom up, the more yellowish is top down, is really where the program is more directive on what is asked for, and the TRL levels from fundamental research up to competitive development is indicated on the horizontal axis, and you can see that the personal grants are typically more oriented on the lower TRL levels on the more fundamental science, and some other programs are more oriented towards experimental development, and often these are also industry driven. And when it comes to competitive development, what companies are doing, then there is no funding at all, because then it's competition, and it should be fair and cannot be supported. So the funding level then goes down to 0%. Where the funding level is higher, the more left you are when it's more fundamental and pre-competitive, then it's okay that public funds are put in. And if you go more higher level, more at the right side of the picture, it gets more into private funds, investments from companies and investors that are the source of money. So purely scientific, the left side is the corner where you have to look, and then personal grants are probably more applicable. Let me move on. Well, it was already said, I think, also here, similar to the personal grant, how to come to a proposal. Find a match between your scientific interest, your ambition, your idea, and a relevant funding program, taking several boundary conditions into account. Discuss this with peers, with support professionals, to really come to the right choice. If you make the wrong choice here, you can waste a lot of effort. From that, you have a basic project idea, typically written in a 2-pager on a couple of slides only. Discuss this with peers and core partners. Invite core partners in case there is a consortium to be made. Do not write a full elaborated project proposal yet. Involve other people for the non-scientific skills like market size or economic impact or those kind of things, or an ethical paragraph or data management plan or whatever. And there are many non-scientific aspects that are also required in a contemporary proposal. It should be teamwork, we believe, in order to get an orchestra also mostly plays when people work and play together. The project evolution chain, I think, like any child has 2 parents, a good project only starts when there is a match between the top-down strategy from, for instance, the university or the department where you are working or want to be working, the ambition they have, like we want to address the energy problem or so, and the calls for proposal and the funding programs that happen to exist. So some pragmatism and some opportunism is also there. If you, for yourself, develop a scientific interest for which there are no calls, you may have a hard time. While if you develop a scientific interest where there are calls, you have an easier life to get the funding. So the match between the top down and the bottom up, that is the start of a project orientation phase. Talk with people, is this a good idea? Do I see the match right? Then you go into definition, which results in an approval, in a proposal. Then you wait for the approval. You get a grant, you have preparation to go, ready to go. You execute the project and the results are there. That's the overall view. We distinguish 6 phases in the project, 3 pre-award and 3 post-award phases. And there are many steps to go through, and this is not done overnight. This it typically takes quite some time. So similar with the personal grants, also the collaborative grants should grow. But the difference here, the distinguishing element, is that here also consortium forming is required. And that is a much more complicated process, while a personal grant can be written, as a person, more in isolation and with fewer people involved, which is kind of more efficient or quick.
Paul, excuse me.
Yep.
Would you be able to wrap up in under 5 minutes? Yeah.
Less, I guess. So I think these are the last 2 or 3 slides. The what is very important, the definition of the scientific innovation. Where is the state of the art? Where do you feel there are gaps and that you could advance the state of the art? Is what you make really a novel insight? Is that really beyond the state of the art, or had it already been made available by others? So it's very good to be aware of where the state of the art exactly is. By definition, innovation is going beyond the state of the art. where no one has gone before. Is that really the case? And what are the steps you want to take in that novel area? Is your approach different? Is the method different? Is the infrastructure different? Is the, what distinguishes you from all other scientists that also try to do that? Maybe you can have multidisciplinary aspects that you bring together a unique combination of expertise in a certain consortium. Or is the difference that the impact is bigger than other projects? And when we talk about impact, it's kind of a buzzword lately used in many contexts with often different semantics. Do we talk about scientific impact, quotations, citations, getting a prize? Do we talk about economic impact, transfer to industry, which eventually results in sales and economic growth? Or is it more some societal issues like healthcare, where you make more people healthy or happy? What is the impact you are aiming for? That's very good to be aware of that and to make explicit what the impact will be and how you aim to achieve that. And this is a kind of checklist for the two-pager. What should you write in the two-pager? Well, at least address these 6 points. I guess I mentioned them already. So I come to my conclusion that we gave a brief overview of the Dutch academic ladder from postdoc to full prof. We gave an overview of some personal grants, European and national, collaborative grants, European, national, transnational, regional. There are many kinds. And recommendation how to write a proposal, which in general is involve others, both your scientific peers and support professionals. That we feel is the recipe to go. And that concludes my presentation from the Research Support Office of the TU Eindhoven.
Well, thank you very much. It was really good presentation. I really enjoyed it myself.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Rian, also for helping in. And once again, I am afraid we will have to move on with the next presentations. I hope you don't mind. If you have time to stay with us, you're very welcome. I believe the next talks will also be in English. I saw the last question in the chat, but I guess we will answer this one and whatever questions we have next in the end of the webinar. Now we're just going forward with it. Yeah.
Maybe I can just answer the question on the seed funding.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Are there specific funding schemes for seed funding? Not in general, not that I know of, but I do know sometimes at certain universities that universities themselves organize fund for seed funding, and indeed 25K is then an amount that sometimes is issued to support the writing process. But also very often, and especially also at Eindhoven University, there is no seed funding, and the investment to write should be done from earlier projects that already run. So that there are no real explicit public calls on seed funding as far as I know. That, okay. And I have also answered that question.
Thank you very much. Okay, once again, thank you, Paul and Rian. And now we are moving to Evgeny Ranchitko. So Evgeny is a PhD student in the University of Leiden. And as far as I know, he was awarded Erasmus Plus grant in his time. Evgeny, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andre. Let me start my slides. Hello, everyone. Hope you can see my slides and hear me well. Great. So, as Andre said, my name is Evgeny. I obtained my bachelor's and master's degrees in organic chemistry from Ukrainian University, and now I'm a PhD candidate in the Netherlands in Leiden University. And today I will share my personal experience, how to seize it. So a little bit about my path. In 2013, I entered bachelor's at Kyiv Polytechnic Institute, which is a university in Ukraine, and in organic chemistry, and was about first or second year when I realized that I wanted to do science probably abroad. And I started to prepare for it by learning English and building up my CV. And one of the advantages that my university had is that there were a few options of international student mobility. So in 2017, I had a chance to go to Germany to Justus Liebig University on a summer school program. This is, you can see this beautiful new chemical building there in Gießen, and it was a short 3 months internship, but it gave me a taste of work in a state-of-the-art lab and of this dynamic workflow. So it only reinforced my desire and crave. And next year I went to Leiden University via Erasmus Plus grant for 8 months internship. Then I returned back to Ukraine to graduate from my Ukrainian university, and returned as a PhD candidate in biochemistry later same year to Leiden University. And I consider this 8 months internship at Leiden University was the key step in my transition from student to researcher. So I would like to tell you a little bit about it. Okay, so Erasmus Plus grant starts with admission, and it starts well in advance before the actual internship, more than half a year. So it's wise to think about it beforehand. What I did first, I checked option my university had in terms of student international mobility, and Leiden University was one of them. And then there was a selection round, which in my case was quite formal because there were less candidates than spots available. But anyway, there are some minimal requirements to your language proficiency and academic grades. So yeah, after selection is over, after you have been admitted, there is also quite some paperwork like visa arrangement and things like that, which is I wouldn't call this process difficult because it's well guided, but it does take a few months, as well as accommodation, insurance, and similar things. Your preparation for your stay also takes some time. So I would advise to start with these things once you have been admitted, so that you can have a peace of mind. And then I arrived in the Netherlands, and well, I was submerged to this new reality. Met people from all around the world every day, and the Dutch lifestyle has a lot to learn from. So yeah, also the Erasmus Plus grant scholarship was sufficient for me, at least, to live a modest student life and travel around a little bit. So it was a nice experience anyway to go there abroad. But also the main goal was, of course, doing research, which I genuinely enjoyed because of the nice conditions and interesting projects. I also took a few courses voluntarily because they were of so high quality. And all the time I was thinking of the next step. I was talking to current PhDs and looking around at other groups at the university to find out where I can continue my career afterwards. And 6 months after my internship finished, I returned as a PhD candidate, not to the same group I did my internship at, but to the group of a professor whose course I took voluntarily. So that's just another confirmation that being on location is increases your chance to be noticed. If you're curious about this, my experience, there is a small article on Leiden University website, which is called the Erasmus Plus Grant Opens Doors. So as I said, my recipe to becoming a researcher after graduation from your master's, I think the simplest way is internship at that university prior to the application, because when people know you personally, when they know your work, your chances increase. But if for some reason this option doesn't suit you, you can check Science for Ukraine website. If you're Ukrainian, there are some positions available. Some groups also post positions of vacancies on LinkedIn and their websites, so you can apply there directly. You can also apply for a fellowship. For example, I know many of my colleagues are Marie Curie fellows, so that's definitely an option. And as a last resort, you can identify professors whose group you would like to join and just email them your CV and cover letter and hope someone answers. So what being a PhD in the Netherlands actually looks like, or at least how I experience it. So at the first day of your PhD, you will obtain a topic which will be with you for the next 3-5 years, and you will be kind of a boss of it, because on a daily basis you will decide on or you will be responsible for decision making, for time management, for yeah, things like that. And also this freedom of course comes with the responsibility, so it's different from master's project quite a bit. PhD in the Netherlands at least does include a lot of work with data, such as reading papers and listening to other people presentations and presenting yourself, and write articles and discuss your project with everyone around. So data is everywhere. The good things is that you have access to anything you need, like equipment, reagents, software, collaborations from adjacent fields. So basically the only limitation to your project is your creativity and your productivity. And PhD also involves supervision of students and helping professors in teaching. So teaching is involved. And to sum it up, I do find Netherlands to be a good place to do your PhD at, because it's a comfortable country to live. You can say it's an English-speaking country because the majority of people speak very good English. So all things you need to have done, you can do it with speaking English only. Netherlands is known for its work-life balance. So yeah, it does make the work environment more relaxed, I would say. And comparing to many other European countries, PhD salary in the Netherlands is much higher. So big advantage as well. However, if you want to feel really comfortable, you still might want to learn Dutch, because of course Dutch people speak Dutch in their daily life. Be aware that application might take longer than you would like it to, and don't get frustrated when nothing's happening for weeks just because it takes long, especially in academia. And yeah, be aware that PhD, and especially a PhD abroad, is challenging. And yeah, be mindful of a place you choose to choose the right place, right project, right group to enjoy what you are doing, because PhD is a kind of a commitment for the next 5 years. With that, thank you for your attention, and I will be glad to answer your questions in the Q&A session.
Okay, thank you very much. So the questions, if anyone has questions, you can still post them in the chat. We will get back to them in the end of the webinar. Oля, can you share your screen? Okay, I think you should be able to. Okay, our next speaker is Professor Oля Kudina.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I'm going to share the screen too.
Yes, and Oля is assistant professor in ethics and philosophy in TU Delft, working on the dynamic moral world. Investigating the dynamic moral world and the role of the technologies in it through the prism of moral hermeneutics, if I read it correctly, and pragmatism and empirical philosophy. So very interesting. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see the presentation.
Thanks a lot, Andre. So thanks a lot also for inviting me to share my perspective. At first, I was really hesitant, like, what can I share? I'm still also learning. So it is very much a work in progress and a journey. So I'll basically reflect on what happened so far and what maybe some key points to give away in my journey. So, the slides are, there we go. My Dutch academic story, so to speak, started in 2013 when I came to the Netherlands to get my second master's, right? So prior to coming to the Netherlands, I already got a bachelor and master's in Ukraine in international economic relations. I had a career in diplomacy in Council of Europe, and I really wanted to get a flavor of Western education. I used to study in the United States when I was in high school for a year, also through a grant. And then I wanted to study, you know, like what is the Western European flavor of education? So I applied for lots of scholarship, and I got the Open Society Foundation scholarship from George Soros Fund to get this Master in Science and Technology Studies in University of Maastricht here in the Netherlands. And I think a lot of my academic reflections are based on what happened there, because while there was also this, you know, the study program coordinator who mentioned, you know, guys, there's this really big conference, international conference 4S, that combines scholars in our field, and we meet yearly where scholars go and present their research, and it's this vibrant community where you get to know people, get to know about different opportunities. I strongly encourage you to apply. So I thought, well, that's wonderful. Everybody's probably going to apply. And so I thought, okay, yeah, I want to apply, but you know, what am I going to submit? So I thought, what is my master thesis going to be about? And I decided to submit a very short abstract, sort of based on that, to that conference. And next semester, I found out that I got in, which was wonderful. But then the hurdles started because the conference was in Buenos Aires in Argentina. And I was a scholarship student who received 860 euros a month, which is not enough to buy even a ticket to Argentina. So I reached out to, you know, people who I could get who could help to co-sponsor my trip in there, saying that it would be really important for my academic path, I guess. And it really did work out like that. So when I came up to the conference, I realized that there's this wealth of knowledge and wealth of people who are there to talk to if you just approach them. So I wandered to a conference panel that I really couldn't even pronounce a name. It was called Post-Phenomenology. And I thought, like, what is that? I just really want to know what it is. And there was a Dutch professor who was presenting, you know, on this field, and Jos was presenting on the project that he recently got funding for which he was also looking for 3 PhDs. And it was really wonderful to hear the story about like what are the ethical implications of technology, what are some philosophical aspects, and how to help build with the developers these technologies in a responsible way. So very much applied, which really appealed to me. And I thought, well, if ever I want to continue doing academic life, which at that point I really wasn't sure about, I would like to do it in that specific PhD project. And so after the conference panel, I came, sort of, I stayed, I waited for a long line to get to that professor. I got to him and I shared my life story, also my experience. And he said, well, you know what, you should just apply. Little did I know that when Dutch professors tell you to send them an email, you can wait for 3 months to, you know, get a reply because their inboxes are so busy and filled up. But I did get a reply. And meanwhile, I was sending in my master thesis because I already graduated by that point. I read up on his work and I got an invitation for an interview. Long story short, I did get that PhD position. And I think that story is quite indicative of also a lot of things that I want to talk about in this sort of my Dutch academic story, which is what are some of the pillars that get you away and get you where you want to get in being an academic in the Dutch environment. And I do think that networking is a big part of how people get things done in Dutch academia. It's really about knocking on the doors, finding opportunities, and being very proactive in getting the attention of people that you think you need in order to get you where you want to get with your projects or in order to learn about the opportunities. It's about inviting people for small coffees, which is a very shared cultural point here in the Netherlands. And also for what they call here borrels, which are informal little drinks, non-alcoholic, alcoholic after work, where people get to meet, discuss, and sort of soundboard different ideas with each other. I also think grit is a very important factor in trying to get where you want to get. And that is something by grit here, I mean, I guess determination, it's resilience in the face of very often uncertainty and adaptability. And I really shouldn't tell people who come from Ukraine about these because these are a lot of the conditions in which we are very much used to living in, especially these days. Grit was, I think, some of the very important factors that got me to where I am right now in the position of assistant professor, because PhD is a trajectory, like our previous speaker said, of, approximately 3 to 5 years. In my case, 4-year project, standard project. So it's a pretty much job stability for 4 years. You get a salary and all that. But after that comes a stage of being a postdoc, if you want to continue in academia. And postdocs are far less certain because they can be very short. They can be even from 1 month based contracts, but usually they deviate between a year, half a year and a half, something like that. So really like a small transitioning chunk. I do know people who build up their career being a postdoc, of securing these contracts constantly. But the point is, you really have to keep securing those jobs. And when I wanted to apply from a postdoc to assistant professor, it's also something that doesn't happen, you know, maybe not in my case, but not from the first attempt. So I really think that at the point when I decided that I would like to try from postdoc to assistant professor, I had to apply for like 10 to 12 positions in a span of 1.5 to 2 months, which is quite demanding, you know, and you have to prepare application packages for each job very separately. You make it very unique. You have to tailor your CV to every specific job position. Usually an application process for an assistant professor is a several stages process. And one of them usually is preparing an educational portfolio. And for some interviews, they really even require you to develop a course curriculum for a new course within to tailor for that specific faculty, which is wonderful from the perspective of the employer, because, you know, so many people are invited, want to get that interview and send in all that information that is really requiring a lot of work from you, but only one person will get the job in the end. So you really have to invest a lot of time in preparing for these positions. And it's very frustrating if you get constantly to the, you know, second person on the list, but don't get hired. So it really takes a lot of determination to really get where you want to get. And of course, the factor of luck plays a role there. You shouldn't discredit it, but I really don't think that it's only luck, that it really also this curiosity that drives you as to, you know, what is it that, why do you want to do? Why are you so motivated to do what you want to do? Why is it this specific job? And of course, curiosity, not just content-wise, but to meet people and to put yourself out there outside very much of the comfort zone and trying to get new information, new challenges, constantly basically being on your tiptoes. And the last but definitely not least factor that I think is something very important when we talk about, you know, for my journey, but also I think for quite a lot of other Ukrainians trying to build an academic life here in the Netherlands, is the factor of being a Ukrainian. And by that, I don't mean only the sort of mindset, the cultural background, and the values that we come in, very much so, because I think it really adds up to that point of grit that I talked about that resilience and that adaptability. The specific point I'd like to raise here is the predicament of having to ensure the residence permit in the Netherlands, right? So as a Ukrainian working in these academic spheres in the Netherlands, I very soon came to realize that basically my contract is tied to my legal status in the Netherlands, because I'm hired on a special type of visa that gets transferred to highly skilled migrant residence permit, which means that my permit here to live is only valid as long as I have a contract. So if I don't have a contract, I don't have a legal status to stay here, which kind of makes sense, but it's a lot of pressure. So unlike a lot of my EU-based colleagues, probably about 6 months until the end of my every contract, I had to ensure that I already have a job secured to jump on from next one, such as that my following employer, 6 months before my even current contract expires, can start all the administrative hurdles, for instance, getting in touch with the IND, which is the immigration authority here in the Netherlands, applying for my next residence permit, ensuring that there's a smooth administrative process in place that, like I'm saying, quite a lot of my EU-based colleagues never have to worry about. So this is something that added this factor of being a Ukrainian in this administrative sense is also something that kept pushing me and kept sort of motivating me to be proactive in search for jobs, in trying to understand what is it out there and what is it that I actually want to do? Do I want to stay in that sphere at all? So these are some of the key factors that I want to bring your attention to, and now basically briefly talk about, you know, the step from building scientific independence in the Netherlands. And here I'm talking mostly about from postdoc on, so postdoc assistant professor on. And when, you know, the topic of the title of this presentation was suggested to me as in towards scientific independence in Dutch academia, I thought, what independence? I don't think independence exists. I do think independence in academia, and honestly, not just in academia, is a myth, because you're never just out there in a vacuum, building your desired projects or doing your only things in isolation from everybody else. You are very much a part of a system. And the academic system in the Netherlands also has its particular flavor that I'm sure is different from the German academic system. So it's very important, if you choose to stay on this path, or if you choose to explore this path, to understand the exigencies of what it means to be a part of that system, what is expected of you, what are specific part of your disciplinary ideas, and also to play along with it. Or you decide that is actually not something for you and you move on to a different path. And that's also something that I've encountered several people who, for instance, made it to the level of postdoc and then realized what the criteria are to be at an assistant professor level in their respective field and decided that it's too much pressure, or that it's not too interesting for them, or that they don't want so much teaching. And they decided to move on to a different career path. But you can make the choice only if you understand what is it that is required. So I made a very short and obviously not exhaustive list. And it's just honestly something that came up to my mind as I was preparing for this presentation. What are some of the things that I would, Ukrainians who would be considering to do this career path in the Netherlands, what I would suggest them to think about? And I think a few things I already talked about, namely, know the exigencies of your discipline. Because people before us talked about, the chemistry industry, the chemical field, or I don't know, biosciences, life sciences. They might have their very unique nuances that would not apply for different disciplines. I myself am a case in point because I've been working all my life in the technical universities in the Netherlands, having had a background in international economics and diplomacy, in privacy and data protection. So I have nothing to do with the technical discipline. But I'm also in a section on ethics and philosophy of technology. And prior to PhD, I've never had a training in philosophy or in ethics. My point is that the field I'm working is very multidisciplinary. So I have to be very much on my toes to understand what are the things I need to pay attention to? What are the, what are the certain particularities of conferences, of publications, of whatnot? What journals would allow me to publish the very interdisciplinary work that I do? And that's something that I also urge you to explore for yourself, to know what is it that you're facing yourself with. And as regarding the career steps, also connected to what I was talking about before, it's very much about looking ahead, not just about exploring what is it that I need to comply to now for my yearly evaluations. That's likely something in your contract that you discuss with your supervisors, but also something where you want to get. What is it the next step? Is it a step from postdoc to assistant professor? Then I would strongly suggest to talk to people who are assistant professors to understand how are they being evaluated and knowing what are the criteria for them. And that might help you to, in your job search, in your application package, from postdoc to assistant professor. I think there's also a case in point about cultural differences in academia in Ukraine versus in the Netherlands, and it's about discussion. So one thing I think is not on the slides is the hierarchical structure. So it's not hierarchical in the Netherlands. I would say it's very much horizontal. So of course, since a lot of the communication mostly is in English, you use the pronoun you, which you in English is the same for you as a senior member or you as a junior member. And that actually helps to level down the communication. So there's no sort of you as seniority when you're talking to a high professor and you're a PhD candidate or a postdoc, for instance. And that's something that I've personally also experienced a lot, that there's very much an open door policy in the sections where I've worked with in different faculties in the Netherlands. And you can just knock on the doors of also very famous professors and sort of ask them about the things that are interesting to you, or ask them to schedule a meeting, even if they've never actually talked to you before. So this comes back to the point that I'm here in the slide about openly raising any issues, voicing ideas, or proposing, even with people who seem to be unachievable to you because of their perceivingly high status. But that has also a flip side point, right? You're sort of expected to speak up, but you also very much can expect a direct feedback on whatever it is that you're working during the meetings, or for instance, you're submitting your grant proposal for a feedback by peers, or your paper that you would like to get some comments on from your colleagues. Don't expect tiptoeing, softened language as what your colleagues will come across. The comments might at first sight, as someone coming from Ukraine, and if I recall my experience, come across as very harsh, very direct. They will not be personally attacking you, but they just might say, okay, what you wrote here is nonsense. You really have to rework this thing. This doesn't make any sense, Whereas I think in my experience in Ukrainian academic culture, it would have been much more subtle and phrased differently to get to the point at the very end, right? So there's a very different culture of feedback with that in the Netherlands, which I actually came to appreciate because it gets to the point much faster. And it gives you a quite direct action list of how to follow up and how to make things better, because that's what you want. That's why you're asking for feedback. And speaking of culture, I think another point that I'd like to raise is, and again, speaking to the point of the myth of independence, it's very much project-based culture. So you're not working in isolation, believe it or not, even in the field of philosophy, which before joining the field, I thought, okay, philosophers are someone who read books all the time, sit in their ivory towers and talk about highly theoretical things. Well, that's not the reality that I came to work with. My daily work basically consists of meetings with engineers, AI scientists, with people who build different chips and discussing with them how to implement it in a more, for instance, value-based or responsible way, depending on the exigencies of a project. You work a lot with the students with whom you collaborate also on scientific projects. Don't get me talking about the paper collaborations that you have when there are like 5 people on and you're all writing together. So it's really not just about you. It's not just about your idea or the uniqueness of an idea you have. It's really about how to embed that and how to learn to be able to talk about your idea to people of different disciplines, to people of different sort of maybe who have a different vocabulary because of the different expectations that they might have. So also learn to get your idea across to a wide variety of audiences who would be able to understand it. I was also asked to speak about the grants, but since Paul already did a wonderful job about it, maybe I won't stop about it too much. There are a few ideas about my grants on next slide. One thing that I also would like to point out in terms of specifically early career researchers like postdoc and assistant professors expect teaching. I know this can differ per discipline, right? But in my field, for instance, in philosophy of technology and ethics of technology, I work in technical universities, and in, our section is doing a lot of service teaching to the technical disciplines, because in the Netherlands, all technical disciplines are expected to have ethics and philosophy education. And so our section is providing that ethics and philosophy education to the entire University of Delft. And that's a lot of teaching. Also, for instance, in my contract, the allocation of hours is 50% teaching, 40% research, 10% managerial tasks. So teaching is by far the majority of what I do in the work. And that's why grants can be helpful, right? I'll talk about it on the next page. For instance, with the help of grants acquisition, you can buy out a portion of your teaching to increase the portion of research that you do in the work. Supervising PhD candidates is also a big thing. So for instance, in contrast to the previous talk about the PhD life, not all disciplines during the PhD stage are even allowed to supervise master's students. For instance, in my field, it's not expected. You cannot supervise master projects at that stage of PhD, but you are expected to do that from postdoc and assistant professor on. So at the moment, I'm supervising quite a few of PhD candidates, and it's also making it visible to me how many managerial skills you're also required to acquire to set up a team, to have consistency in the way you're talking and managing different projects. So there is run a theme and people know what to expect of you and how to make yourself available to these researchers while also maintaining the precious chunk of time for your own research during the week. A different note is about the language. I think one of the greatest appeals of the Dutch academic culture to me personally was that I did not have to learn Dutch to come here as a PhD, as a master's student, not because most of the academic life in the Netherlands is in English, and it is indeed so. But when you move up this sort of this academic career ladder, I think it really helps if you study some Dutch, because a lot of the conversations during these informal networking events and stuff, they are in Dutch. A lot of the top professors still are Dutch. So they really, it makes it easier to become a member of this community when you at least try to speak Dutch. Nobody expects perfectness from you, right? But it is nice and it's appreciated when you make an effort to speak the language of the country where you are. And it's sometimes easy to forget because everything is in English, but Dutch still really plays a lot of role here. And increased managerial duties. I think that's something that I've already mentioned with the PhDs, but it's not just that, it's also you're expected to be a member of certain, I don't know, the conferences that you've previously attended as just as an attendant, you know, somebody who's going to present a talk there, you're now suddenly invited to be a member of the managerial board. And that is a lot of prestige that comes with it, but it's also a lot of the time. Or for instance, you're expected to serve on certain boards in your faculty, for instance, employee committees like myself and I'm a member of. So it takes a lot of time and planning. And I have to remind myself that I constantly have to take some courses on time management to really be very careful about my agenda planning and meeting settings to make sure that I can do all management tasks, education, and still have time for my research. I don't think I have a lot of time left, but I very quickly will go through these financial obligations because Paul already gave a wonderful overview to you about the Dutch schemes. It's just my personal take on it, my perspective. Very often, I mean, the academia, when I was joining from PhD time, it was associated with this publish or perish culture, meaning that it was expected that you ensure your place in academia by publishing a lot, and preferably in high impact journals. And it's interesting because while I do think publications are very important, my personal experience is that very often it's recently about grants. It's about what grant did you get, what networks are you in, how much did you get, you know, so it's really about grant talk. And it can be very, yeah, it's a lot of pressure actually on researchers to try to secure these grants, because a lot of the times people are hired for these postdoc, PhD, or assistant professor projects as member of a large grant consortium. So somebody got that grant, they got the money, and now they're hiring you to be a part of the project, which means that you really are not constrained, or almost not constrained in, for instance, travel money or stay abroad money, which is wonderful. But oftentimes you're not a part of that consortium and you're just hired directly by a university. And a lot of times you do not have those budgets to travel for conferences or to do research or to do this kind of, I don't know, to buy the equipment that you need for the experiments that you want to do or for the interviews, whatnot. And it's really up to you to get that money. So then it really depends on your initiative and then your proactive attitude in that. Even moreover, in a lot of the tenure track contracts, it is stipulated that it is expected that you earn through grant acquisition a certain percentage of your salary. So I come back to the points that I said in the beginning. Know the system, know what is expected of you and how it is feasible or not feasible for you to maintain and to sort of follow up for that criteria. But I don't think that it's all that bad. It is a lot of pressure and it is a lot of work, but I think that also in my experience in grant acquisition, it increases insanely your routes to collaboration. Providing the grants, you also reach out to a lot of people and you meet a lot of new people who tell you about the new opportunities. And suddenly there's this whole new network that you have with a lot of new opportunities that you never heard about. It also increases your route to publication pipeline because you then get involved in certain things and suddenly you're a second or third author and sometimes even first, and your publication record also really increases. It's also exposure and visibility to you as a researcher and provides money, what I was saying, for conference or stay abroad grants. It does lead you to new PhD project ideas or actual projects. And in many cases, it is also a way to buy out at least a portion of your teaching so that you can increase time for your research. Paul already talked a lot about the Dutch grant schemes. And I think the one that I haven't maybe seen so much present in his grants rather than from those individual and collaborative grants, I'd like to highlight the one that I haven't, maybe wasn't so prominent there, is not just the national or international schemes, but in the last few years, I've noticed a trend towards Dutch inter-institutional funding schemes. And that means when several universities combine their forces, when they want to promote research in a certain trendy topic. Recently, it's really a lot about AI. And there are a lot of these associations, for instance, between the 4 technical universities called 4TU, University of Twente, Delft University of Technology, Wageningen University, and University of Eindhoven. Then my university, Delft, is a part of the LDE convergence, Leiden, Delft, Erasmus University convergence. Then there's also the EWUU Alliance, which is the alliance between Eindhoven, Wageningen, University of Utrecht, and University of Utrecht Medical Center. And all of these alliances, they have their own internal grant schemes that make it sort of less competitive for the university representatives to get those, to get access to those streams of money. And actually through one of these schemes, through the Delft University AI program, I got a grant together with my collaborator to fund an AI lab called Demos AI, through which I got access to 4 and now actually 5 PhDs. So it's really wonderful to suddenly have access to all of this, room and potentiality that you have from this inter-university grant scheme. So also, again, coming back to the point, know the system, know what options are available to you. And finally, a word of caution, because just like Paul also mentioned, grants, especially individual grants, are insanely competitive. I myself applied for VENI grant 3 months after I finished a PhD project, which was perhaps more a reconnaissance mission than an actual full-hearted attempt to get a grant. I didn't get the grant. But the time you invest in a VENI proposal is insane. I mean, you have to understand that a lot of individual grants are not just grant submissions. You first work several months on a pre-proposal, which is almost a full proposal. And then that's just like sort of making the cut to be allowed to make a full proposal. And then there's a full proposal if you make a cut, which is like suddenly 30 pages or something. And you have to do a lot of things that are suddenly not just content related, but are about budgets, economic parts, some planning for PhDs that, for instance, I really wasn't aware about in advance. And that really freaked me out. And that increased my hour load and investment of my time and something that, yeah, it just, all in all, it was almost a 1.5-year journey to hear about the results. And meanwhile, you're waiting. So I think another thing that I would like to suggest to all of you who are considering grants, either as a Ukrainian working in Ukraine, trying to collaborate with a Dutch or any other European university, don't put your eggs in one basket. Don't invest your time into one grant. Diversify different grant schemes, know what is available out there. And sooner or later, I mean, I think it will come to you, because I really want to stress is, in my experience, these grants are a roulette game. Basically, it's a game of roulette. And in fact, I've heard from some Dutch universities proposals to allocate those grants on a lottery-based basis, because there are so many wonderful and high-level proposals that come in that at some point you really are sort of just nitty-gritty picking on teeny tiny details to pick up those 10 because you have only 10 grants, right? So it's almost more fair to make a sort of general cut and then from that point on select on a lottery basis. Now, this isn't done on these grant schemes of VENI VDVICI, but I've heard a lot of talk of that, and it certainly feels like that from a perspective of a researcher who submits that grant. But what I really would like to also point out, and maybe that is something I came across as a Ukrainian submitting to these grants, sometimes you have this culture of secrecy that is associated with grant submission. Like, this is my idea, I don't want to share, and you know, otherwise somebody will steal it or something like that. I've come to experience the contrary. The more you actually share the idea, the more you own it and it becomes associated with you, sort of tailgating you as a reputation. And the more you share and solicit feedback on that from your colleagues, the better you can update it and prepare yourself in the face of many different coming factors. So I do suggest to pick up sort of trusted community of peers where you can share it with and use it as a soundboard. And you'd be surprised how people very often, even despite of their high workloads, willing to share their time to really read through your proposal and give honest feedback. Now, again, be prepared to receive honest, direct feedback. That's also something that takes time to get used to. But once you have it, I think you really come to appreciate it. So in the end, I just wanted to wrap up by coming back to actually the same scheme that I was representing in the beginning, that to me, if I think about Dutch academia and how you would like to succeed in any given academic trajectory here, it comes back to the point of determination, resilience, and adaptability, something that I term as grit, knowing who you are. And that means your values, where you come from, your culture, but also the predicament of being a Ukrainian, which means administrative things that you have to take into account when you consider certain jobs. What is it that you need to do? Can you collaborate with these universities because you're a citizen of Ukraine? You know, these kind of things. Obviously, curiosity and open-minded attitude to come and anticipate new things, luck. But for me, what I've learned in the Netherlands, it's networking. It's really talking to people. It's events like this, right? That you come across people, follow up, ask questions, and make things that are specific to you, right? So I also leave my contact information on Twitter, LinkedIn, and my website. If you have any other questions, follow up, and I'd be very happy to talk and discuss your specific case. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you, and
thank you, Ola. Yeah, thank you very much. I guess we have this one question that's, although there is already a communication in chat, we still have this one question about key recommendations on the first steps for Ukrainian scientists as immigrants, especially if you don't have contacts with institutions already. Would you advise anything? How to make new contacts? Yeah.
I was myself in a position of, for instance, I identified, and I think that's also what Evgeny was talking about in the previous talk. If you know what you want to do, outline researchers who are working in that area and knock on their doors. So I was sending emails to people out of blue, like I have not met those people before, right? And I said, hi, my name is blah, blah, this is my idea, short pitch. And then like, I saw that you're working on this and that. Could we perhaps have a small chat? So I would not recommend to settle things in email. Use email as a means to arrange a conversation on Zoom, on Microsoft Teams, whatever. And then through that, explain. When you get people on a personal meeting, it's much easier to get what you want or to get your idea across than through email. That's, I think, my biggest advice. But I would start through scoping exercise of identifying, the key players or the players interesting to you. Then email them and try to secure an online meeting for half an hour. I would not ask more than 30 minutes because people have very busy agendas, and an hour meeting is a very generous meeting. If you really already have a follow-up, maybe ask for 30 minutes, and if they agree, then really then prepare your pitch for that. That would be something as I would recommend as first steps.
Okay, there was a question on the examples of refugees getting job at in the Netherlands, the university.
I'm sorry, is that to me or is it to everybody?
I think it's a more of a general one. So people are asking if anyone knows examples of such people. I don't know examples, but I know that in sites for Ukraine, they did have a number of positions, like hires and PhD students, and people got the jobs. I don't know the names. Do you know anyone like that who came to Netherlands during the war and was able to be hired?
So I know that I have not seen any of the general, let's say, Dutch academia responses, but there's been pocket niche responses from universities. So I know that at the University of Twente, they were hiring specifically Ukrainian artists, artist researchers and designer researchers, specifically because of the war. And they offered them like bridging contracts. So not like a permanent contract immediately or something, but like a 3 months contract that they could use up to write a grant proposal to get a grant to stay in the Dutch, to try to stay in the Dutch academia. So that's something that I've come across with. Mm-hmm. But it's also interesting reverse, because for instance, I was hiring for the lab, this AI lab that I had in the months of like from November to February, I was advertising everywhere I could. And I tried to target a lot of Ukrainian technical universities. And since I don't have contacts there, I was contacting through the general email address lists of different faculties. And I've never heard replies. I never heard back. And that was very difficult because even when I'm a Ukrainian and I would like to try to secure places for Ukrainian, this was before the war. I hardly got any response. And that's also something frustrating, maybe because it's a niche field, philosophy of technology, that it scares people off. But when you read about it, you realize, even a science engineer can apply. So there's also that.
Okay, Taichi, you raised hand.
Indeed, I guess maybe just a quick experience on my end. So we actually were hosting someone in our house from Ukraine. And then so one of the things we wanted to do was indeed help her settle in. So we were able to find her a position, but it was very much through as someone outlined, indeed active networking and then sort of finding job opportunities, not purely just tailored for Ukrainian researchers, but then just for any job application. So we did try to provide her opportunities. So that was indeed how she ended up getting a job, but it did take her about 3 to 4 months. And already being here was actually a good facilitator, because then it's not something that, oh, okay, are you coming from Ukraine? It was easier for her to say, oh, we can give you an interview tomorrow. Can you make it? And she was able to travel. So that was our experience.
Yeah. Also, someone was asking about, like, can scientists enter technical field? I don't think there are any borders, really. If you're qualified enough and they want you, they will take you.
I think the previous hurdle was indeed always the residence permit and visas. And now, because that is waived, it is very much easier to apply you're very much seen as a European citizen to be able to apply for these positions. So that hurdle is gone.
Okay. Okay, I don't see any other questions. in group chat. Okay. All right. I think we can wrap up now.
Andrei,
yeah,
do you
thanks.
think maybe we can ask, maybe somebody wants to ask question in Ukrainian? Because
Oh,
I don't know about the language barrier, but I mean, for the sake of this being a meeting for Ukrainian scholars.
окей. Так, добре, якщо хтось хоче українською запитати, будь ласка.
Я хотів сказати дякую.
Дякую, Павло. Окей. Yes, Oksana.
Hello to everybody. Добрий день. I just wanted to make a comment to Olga's statement. Просто прокоментую про пошук українців. Я особисто отримувала запити від зарубіжних професорів, які казали, от ми хочемо, ми готові, але ми не знаємо, як знайти тих українців. І мені здається, що дуже важливо все-таки бути активним у професійних соціальних мережах. Я знаю, що в Україні Фейсбук і Телеграф дуже така розповсюджена форма спілкування. Моє відчуття, що західні науковці професійно спілкуються більше в LinkedIn, і, можливо, це краща платформа для пошуків контактів. І тут я просто хочу як невеличку рекламу. На початку, мабуть, було згадано UKRAINET, Українська академічна міжнародна мережа. Ми маємо групу в LinkedIn, там більше 700 учасників, більшість Україна, Німеччина, але більше 30 інших країн, не тільки люди українського походження. І це одна з можливостей, от так як пані Ольга сказала, коли вона шукала роботу, когось на роботу, тобто там можна оголошувати, або навпаки шукати партнерів, тобто це може бути корисним. Ну і загальна така порада. Я працюю у відділі у Берліні, у відділі фінансування наукового. Перший крок для науковця пошуку партнера – це, власне, читання статей і спілкування з авторами, тому що ви знаєте свою галузь, і це нормально, дуже легко спілкуватися, там завжди є імейл контактної персони. Коли ви пишете людині, що ви прочитали її статтю, у вас є якісь ідеї з приводу там подальших там чи експериментів, чи наукових розробок, людині це завжди дуже приємно, і люди на це дуже часто реагують. Тобто це, як на мене, самий прямий спосіб знаходження, власне, контактів за кордоном, навіть якщо ви раніше не мали активних таких колабораторів. Це така маленька порада.
Дякую. Я, до речі, напевно, сама скористуюсь вашим ресурсом, тому що будуть позиції ще технічні в сфері AI в Delft, вони будуть з'являтися протягом наступного року, і насправді, тобто, я би дуже хотіла її поширити серед спільноти. І ще я кинула в чат зараз посилання на Academic Transfer. Я знаю, що мої колеги в основному користуються цим ресурсом для пошуку вакансій. Тобто вони з'являються, коли ми публікуємо якусь вакансію, вона з'являється на сайті нашого університету і зразу кидають в Academic Transfer. І лише потім вона виходить на LinkedIn. Тому варто мати його теж на увазі.
І Twitter зараз став площадкою для
100%. Я забула
реклами.
сказати. Academic Twitter – це прям big deal. І мене часто запрошували на якісь токи, на якісь конференції саме через Twitter, що було доволі дивно. Не через LinkedIn, а через Twitter. Тому теж можливо.
Окей. Okay, I suggest we wrap up now. We as a proper webinar, we have exceeded our time limits. So I think give some links to groups. I don't think it's like you don't have groups on Twitter, but it's more like you choose people from the same field and then you just wait.
LinkedIn-овську групу я кинула в чат.
Yeah. But on Twitter, there are no groups. You just follow specific people that you might be interested in. Okay. Yeah, if you have further questions, you received Olga shared her contacts. Slides will be shared, I guess. Recording will be shared. Yeah. And at this point, once again, thank you to all our speakers, organizers, and yeah, I wish everyone a nice day and success to everyone who's looking for a position.